Welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Kim King, and today we're diving into an important part of the adoption journey that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. What happens after placement? I'm joined by a very special guest, MaryAnne Budden. MaryAnne is an adoptive mom, the founder of the blog Openly Parenting, and someone who has a heart for supporting adoptive families as they navigate open adoption and parenting after placement. MaryAnne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this chance to connect today. So let's start by giving listeners a little background. Can you share your family's adoption story? Obviously, that's its own podcast, but
Yeah.
how you came, like, introduce us. How did you come to adoption? How has life unfolded? We're going to talk a lot about post-adoption, but just kind of introduce us to what brought you to adoption.
So my husband and I went the cliche route of we weren't able to get pregnant. We tried on and off, did IUI, and then I was just so tired of taking negative pregnancy tests that I didn't want to go through the IVF process and just said, like, let's just skip ahead. My cousin had used Lifetime and had adopted, and so that's how we ended up with Lifetime. And then the adoption process also took a little bit longer than normal. We were in Michigan when we started and did all the home studies and jumped through all those hoops. And then my husband got relocated for work, so we had to put the adoption on hold, which was on hold for like 9 months. And we moved to Arizona, and then we had to complete a home study and jump through all those hoops again. And then the birth mom, actually her mother actually reached out to us. And what's really funny is that they contacted my in-laws first, and then my in-laws were calling me saying there's a woman trying to get a hold of you. So we reached out to the Lifetime office, and they had said, we have been Googling you all morning. We have no idea how they got a hold of you and got your information. We did not give anything. They contacted us on Friday, and we told them, get the medical information in first, and then we'll connect you guys. And so they gave us permission to kind of continue to proceed and keep everybody in the loop. And so that was a Sunday. That Wednesday, we had our formal phone call and were matched. That Saturday, we met them. The following week, she came home for like a sleepover and gave us some of her stuff. And then a week later, we had custody. So
Wow.
It was a long process leading up to it, but once we found out that she was here,
Your daughter.
was fast. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter was 6.5 months old when we adopted her, and they chose us because we were in Arizona, as were they, so we were kind of in close proximity for our open adoption dynamic.
Wow, that is incredible just how the Lord worked in connecting you guys.
Yeah.
But you had already jumped through all the hoops. You had already taken the steps you needed to take to be ready for a call like that to come out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then within a short period of time, get all the documents together, get all the screening from birth mom, all the medical history and everything that, Lifetime Adoption, your agency, of course, gets for you as adopted parents. And then suddenly there you were with your baby in your arms, your new baby girl.
Yeah. And it was entirely nerve-wracking, that first phone call, but we kind of were on the same page as far as expectations. And so our adoption dynamic is that we're entirely open. When we were in Arizona, we had a couple visits a year. Now that we're in Colorado, my daughter and I flew out last year for a weekend to see the birth family. They've been out here once or twice. And then we have a shared photo album that all of our family is on, and they are as well. So it's we're one unit. And so we share and upload those photos to everybody, and then we'll text or call or FaceTime when it's convenient for us. And I texted her a picture this morning of my daughter all dressed up for picture day. And so she looks so old. And I know, she's big.
Super elderly in school now.
She's almost 7 now too. So a lot's changed.
Yeah. So just as a side conversation, of course, you shared with them that you were going to be relocating from Arizona, and that was part of how, she found that connection with you. She wanted an Arizona family, and obviously, nobody can control if a birth mom moves or adoptive parents move, but it sounds like that you have done a really good job, one, of using technology to stay in touch, and that you're going above and beyond, like even just flying back to Arizona, which is nothing, that's not an obligation you make when you say we're willing to see you again throughout the years.
Yeah. Well, when my husband had the interview, I had gently texted them, "Hey, he's got an interview, nothing's happened." So it was like a gentle nudge, like we might be leaving the state. And then we're just in a position where it's easier for us to travel, and because we still have, friends back in Arizona, it's an easy justification to just make a weekend trip. And
Yeah.
we're just so appreciative of her as well. She's just got such an easygoing attitude, and is she's thankful for all the efforts we put forth to stay connected as well.
Yeah, I think that is such a great example of just transparency,
Hmm.
and I think that transparency means so much to parents who have placed a child, that you just, even the moment that you thought it was a possibility, you eased her into that
Hmm.
this could happen. And so it
Yeah,
wasn't like something she discovered later on her own or anything like
right.
that. But you had that love and respect for her, that you were able to have that transparency, and you have that positive connection with her, and that she's someone that you can have a positive connection with, which in private adoption and infant placement, usually birth moms these days in modern adoption are, someone that you can have a positive connection with for years to come. Even as your location may change, technology may offer more ways to keep in touch, such as the shared album that you guys are uploading to that she has access to. Just all of those things allow that relationship to naturally ebb and flow, as we often refer to
Yeah.
it. So, one thing that you have emphasized, MaryAnne, is that adoption doesn't end the day it's finalized. What are some of the things that you wish you had been prepared for in those first months and years of parenting after adoption?
Well, when you're going through the adoption process, you're so focused on just placement and finalization that you kind of forget what the parenting journey is going to look like afterwards.
Mhm.
So, one of the things I struggled with right at the beginning was this: what does attachment feel like? I didn't give birth. I don't have this rush of hormones. Like, here's a child. I absolutely love her and I'm so happy she's here. But how do I know if I'm attached to her, and what does that look like? Like, she seems very attached to me, but there was a time where we were hanging out with friends and a child started crying. And then it took me a second where I'm like, oh, wait, that's my child. I have a child that's crying. Like, and so I felt guilty that I didn't know that instantly. And I actually talked to a lot of moms, because nobody talks about this kind of stuff. And I had a friend that admitted that it took her a year to attach to her second child, who's her birth child, that, it just looks different. And she had a friend that she feels like all the hormones helped her attach to the nurse that helped deliver the baby and not the baby itself. So,
Mhm.
attachment will come, but there's not this like forced, you're not a bad parent if you're not attached instantly. And then there's also mom guilt is real, but there's this extra layer of guilt as an adoptive parent because you feel like you should always be so grateful and appreciative of every second you get with this child because you've done so much to bring this child home. And so I remember like I had the feelings of being frustrated that I couldn't soothe my child and she's crying again. And, I'm getting so frustrated. I had a thought that I'm like, I just want to like throw her across the room. And like, who has that thought? I'm a horrible person for even thinking that. And I had a friend like remind me that comedians make jokes about, they tell you you're not going to like to not shake a baby, but they don't tell you you're going to want to shake the baby. So
Yeah.
those are natural feelings that every parent gets frustrated. But as an adoptive parent, you feel this extra layer of like, I shouldn't feel frustrated. I should be so grateful to have this child. And so there's just these extra layers of guilt throughout the process. When it comes to boundary setting, there's this guilt of you want to show gratitude with, when you get frustrated, you feel guilty for feeling frustrated. And that's normal mom guilt, but then it's also just that extra layer as an adoptive parent.
Yeah, I think so. And when your path to parenting came through adoption, it's almost like we forget that normal. everyday families, whether biological or through adoption, all can have the potential to feel
Mhm.
these feelings and have these thoughts or these, urges. But then we just remember too that no parenting experience is perfect, whether
Mhm.
biological or through adoption, right? But your scenario is perfect for you because God has given you everything
Yeah.
that you needed to be the best mom that your daughter Layla needs. And like, obviously, it was meant to be that she came to you and you just jumped into the deep end of parenting a 6-month-old baby girl.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Yeah.
one of the other things when after placement is
Yeah.
you do have kind of that nature versus nurture thing that you're trying to navigate. And so as she has gotten older, you're trying to figure out, is her reaching this milestone a normal pace? Or like I did so much research around potty training. And apparently, there's a correlation of if you were an early potty trainer, there's a higher chance your child will be an early potty trainer. So, like, that's one reason that I'm thankful for our open adoption, that I'm able to reach out to the family and ask, like, when did you reach these milestones and what did that look like for you? And understanding, like, my daughter has developed a lot of anxiety, and understanding that, as beautiful as adoption is, there can still be trauma from that transfer from birth mom to adoptive parents, whether it was at birth or 6 months. And so recognizing that that can manifest, and it can look like anxiety, it can look like ADHD, it can look like a variety of things. And so navigating, we've gotten my daughter into OT, and we have a therapist helping us. And then we've been able to use dialogue with the birth family of, oh, well, I had anxiety that ran in it. Okay, so is this nature and nurture? They had these learning disabilities. And so being mindful of all of those genetic components that, you have to be cognizant of and aware of and willing to kind of accept and provide the supports necessary. So there's a whole layer of component that could be its own podcast too. But
Right. And I mean, as a mom, as adoptive parents, you become aware naturally through the course of just learning about adoption and parenting that at any age, there's a level of trauma that
Mhm.
comes from the adoption process itself. And so I'm sure that crossed your mind when you have a 6-month-old, 9-month-old baby girl that's, inconsolable. And you're probably like, wait, is this the trauma? Is she grieving? Or is this like she just needs a snack? Like, what?
Well, and
You
honestly,
know?
I didn't even think about trauma until like the last year, because I thought she was so young that,
Mhm.
she wouldn't remember. And so I've been recommended, and I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, of just, even if we don't remember things that have happened to us when we were younger, our body still has a way of holding on to things. And so recognizing like some of the behaviors she has, might be a trauma response. And unfortunately, anxiety, ADHD, trauma, they also all look like each other. So trying to figure out what she has and how we can support her has been a task in itself. But um, once again, those just aren't things that are talked about after the adoption, of like, you're going to have to face that regardless of how beautiful the placement is and how great you are as parents, there's going to be a component of trauma that you're going to have to know and be open to supporting.
Right. And I love how on your blog post, there was one part where you talked about how you don't celebrate Gotcha Day in
Mm-hmm.
your specific scenario. It's just not a thing that you
Mm-hmm.
make a big deal out of. Maybe talk a little bit more about your thinking behind that because I really loved what you said in the post.
Well, I actually heard it from another adoptee, which is kind of where that seed got planted. Was that Gotcha Day tends to be for the parents, that you're so excited you're parents. And so of course you want to celebrate when you became a family. You want to celebrate the day they came home. But you're also celebrating a day where the child was, whether the ties were legally severed or whether they were just placed with you, it's still a day where they were separated from their birth mom. And as they get older, they might not see it as this, excuse me, this celebration. They might kind of go, there's a little bit of sadness with that. I appreciate the life I was given, and I appreciate how I was raised, but this is still a different day for me. And I had actually asked, like I had a student, I used to be a teacher who was adopted, and I had asked, like, do you do a gotcha day? And they didn't. And so I think it's important for her story that we talk about, hey, you came home this day, or this is the day, we went to court and everything was legalized. But we do try to keep everything focused around her and not, we're so excited so that we're going to make this day about us. So we don't do gotcha day.
Right. Yeah. And I love that. I thought that was just really great insight. Um, I think it's, maybe a little different for international adoption. You see celebrations of Gotcha Day and, the day that the child received a family, right?
Well, yeah, there's
Yeah.
absolutely like situations where like if somebody has been in the foster system for a while and they're so
Yeah.
excited to have a family, or there's children who finally got adopted by a step parent and they're so excited about that, or I mean, there's definitely situations where a gotcha day is for the child. In our circumstance, if we celebrated gotcha day, it would be because we were celebrating when we became parents.
And I love that we're able to take these moments to get into that nuance because the adoption path is just, there's nuance around every corner, around every bend, right? And that's why it's so important that we're having these conversations and have your blog and have your Instagram, which is also amazing. And that, we have podcasts where we get to kind of just peel back those layers a little bit. And so, when it comes to open adoption, can you tell us? I mean, you've already really open adoption is just a natural part of your life, right? It was a natural part of how your adoption came to be, how it occurred, and that you've naturally been keeping in touch. But, for families that might be new to it and might be a little apprehensive, talk about what that looks like for you, that aspect of your parenting.
So when we considered open adoption, my husband was actually apprehensive at first. There's a lot of fear around open adoption. There's a lot of fear of, if the birth mother's involved, is she going to want to take her child back? And, as you become more educated, you realize like, no, open adoption is affirmation to the birth family that they made a choice that was in the best interest of their child and that their child is thriving. Like they just want that connection. And, for our home study in Arizona, there were so many hours of education required, and we fulfilled that by attending this conference that had birth families speak, adoptive families that spoke about their experience, and that's when my husband was kind of won over of like, oh, like this is a lot more comforting. And so we pursued open adoption because we wanted to make sure that Layla didn't feel like she was abandoned or forgotten. We wanted her to have access to her story, answers to questions we might not have, medical history. We get pictures from her birth mom from the birth family, so she can see if she looks like grandma, or she can see that she has cousins. And when we visited in Arizona, we were able to FaceTime with some of those cousins and get to see a little bit of the birth mother's world. And so we really liked open adoption just because it provided that comfort for Layla. And once again, it's, child centric. And so we're doing this for her. We want her to have that sense of connection, have a better ability to form her own identity and know where she comes from. And it's just more people to love her.
Yes, and I love the word that you use, that open adoption gives affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
It is so affirming. And that was something I was thinking about when I was reading this part of your blog. The blog is openlyparenting.com. We'll link it on the show page. And in this particular, I think it was just a few, you're just like prolific. I mean, it's just pouring out of you. But in this particular post, it's just a few days ago. I mean, time is doing crazy things right now, but
Yeah.
it's just a few days ago, and it says her birth mother made the most difficult decision out of love to place her daughter with another family so she could have a life that she wouldn't have otherwise. It was never about being good enough or unloved. It was never a fact of being unwanted or abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And with open adoption, you're reinforcing that, and this is where you continue writing, I want my daughter to know that the topic is not a taboo subject in our household. She can ask any question she wants, and it's not going to get weird. I will answer her questions to the best of my ability, and I can always reach out to her birth mom for those answers if I don't have them. I want my daughter to have a strong sense of identity, who she is, and where she came from. And so
Mhm.
you can get more of these gems on openlyparenting.com. So be sure to check her out, follow her on Instagram. But that is just so encouraging, I think, for parents to really hear from you the why behind
Mhm.
why you have this open adoption and how it's affirming. And I think that is really the sentiment behind what the studies are now showing as to why open adoption is what's healthiest and in the best interest of the child.
Well, and we've talked about her adoption story since day one. And once again, that was inspired from the conference we went to. And people will ask, are we going to tell her she's adopted? We have a transracial adoption. I think she's going to figure it out pretty quickly.
Right.
It's different. But so we've told her from day one the whole story of how she came home. And we talk about that even the day that she was placed with us, that her birth mom and grandma cried. And we've talked about how they cried sad tears because they were going to miss her so much. But they wanted, to do the best for her. And we told her how we cried happy tears. And so we've been very authentic of that. This isn't just an entirely happy thing, that there were people sad, and it's because they miss you. And this is why they want pictures of you. And this is why they want to talk to you still, because they do miss you. And there was somebody on Instagram that I followed who talked about that he grew up in a transracial adoption, but when you write the story that this was made out of love, he grew up affiliating love and loss together. And so I don't want her to grow up thinking love is, giving up something. And so I want her to understand that this wasn't just because you're out of love, you're going to lose people. This was a really difficult decision, and it was hard, and there were sad tears, but we're still connected to them, and they still love you, and we're a unit.
Right. And there's just this element or nuance again of sacrificial love,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then how for everyone it's always a little bittersweet, right? Because for
Yeah.
you to all come together, the birth mom had to live out those actions of sacrificial love.
Yep.
And that is just one of those factors that even before there were studies showing that open adoption is what's healthiest for a child, that adoptive parents cared about their child's birth mom and couldn't imagine falling off the face of the planet and leaving her wondering where and how her child is. And now we know the benefits to the child as well, like you've illustrated, being able to go back and be like, when did you potty train?
Right.
And get other, insight for like health and family
Yeah.
history, things that
Yeah.
can then
Well,
on
and
top
she
of that.
because she was 6 months, she had a UTI before we got her. And so when she got sick as a baby, they were able to tell us, well, these were the symptoms she had when she had a UTI. This is what, medication she was on. So we could tell the doctor this is the medication she was on. And so it was just, yeah, it's just so nice to have all of that information and that connection. And she can now fill in when you start telling her story. She can fill in the blanks, and she'll, they had sad tears, and this is why. And you're like, yep, that's why. And so she can now tell her story. And as she gets older, then she'll get to choose how much of her story she wants to tell and who she wants, to know.
Right, absolutely. And this is all modern adoption. If you think about, how sometimes even today, parents who are encountering infertility and loss and are coming to adoption as a path to becoming parents, sometimes they still expect it to be closed, but look at all the things you miss out on if someone was just to leave a baby on your doorstep and then you move on happily ever after.
Right.
There's just so much if you can be a little flexible and extend your heart a little bit. And also understand that for most adoptive parents, especially when they have had an agency that has helped support and educate them early on, and when they've had a private adoption where the birth mom wanted adoption and chose them,
Mm-hmm.
for her child, that it is something that can be just so positive and that you can actually have that connection and you're not just starting with no information, which it seems easier at first to just
Well,
have no ties, right?
yes, there's so much you're parenting from fear at the beginning. And so
Exactly.
the person who conducted our home study in Michigan had given us the advice of do not promise anything you can't follow through with. That, if you don't keep up your end of the bargain, that your child will find out later that, you promised my birth mom all this and you didn't do it. And so we were always very cognizant of that, of, under promise and over deliver. And you're just so scared. So our boundaries were a little bit tighter at first. And I was like very protective of like being called mom and, just, you're just you're parenting out of fear. And as you become more comfortable and you recognize like, she knows who mom is, she knows, who everybody is. This really isn't, this big taboo, scary thing, that the birth mom truly wants what's best. And then we kind of loosened up on our, approach, and things were definitely more casual. At the same time, another thing that, you have to learn is that your boundaries are going to change. They're going to get more lax, or there's going to be times where we've had to kind of make our boundaries a little bit tighter of, we feel like we're bending. And once again, that layer of guilt comes in, of you're trying to accommodate and you're being cognizant of all the emotions everybody is dealing with. And so you want to be mindful of all of that. So you find yourself bending more than you normally would and trying to accommodate. And finally, you have to get to a point where you're like, no, these are my boundaries. This is what I'm comfortable with. This is what's in the best interest of the child. Like, and so right now for me, I feel like my role is to keep everything copacetic, take advantage of the open adoption dynamic we have. But if my child gets older and she's like, I don't want to go for my birthday, like, can we stay here? I will let her do that. If she's like, I want to go all week, we'll go all week. Like, I'll let her kind of advocate for what she wants, so that there's never an obligation, but that door is always open for her.
Yeah, and how that can look differently year to year. And she's 7 now, so she knows her story. She knows her identity as your daughter, and also as an adoptee, and she knows exactly who her tummy mommy is, and many other biological relatives as well. It's not confusing to her, and this is something that has always been her normal. And I'm sure that you also make it a policy to use positive adoption language.
Yeah, and we've had books, like we find picture books that help kind of explain it. And honestly, it's also because we've had conversations from the get-go of, how families come in different shapes and sizes and come to be, that, she had a friend who came from a divorced household. And so we're explaining why the parents live in different, and we're like, remember, so, some people have a mom and dad, and some people have multiple families, and, they have a mom in one house and they have a dad in another house. Like, all families are different. So it made it real easy to transition and explain divorce for, the kids. And she's like, okay, like, that's how their family looks. And it wasn't a big, explain divorce to me.
Right. I love how much clarity you have. And I think too, as adoptive parents who are preparing for adoption and haven't adopted yet, there's all this gray area out there, but your blog really gives a lot of clarity. And there was one really cute, your answer to this is so short. When people ask you in public, because you have a transracial adoption, right? And people come up to you and ask, if someone was to come up to you and ask you, is she yours? Your response is so clear, so simple. What's your response?
Yes.
Exactly.
And here's the thing, is that we were warned in the conference when we listened to these families in transracial adoption. They said, you'll be surprised at the audacity that what people have to say. And we're kind of like, nobody's going to say that. And we've had like comments and circumstances. I mean, there was one specific where this guy kept asking, like, we had just finalized the adoption, and we were in line at the pharmacy, and we just told the pharmacist, like, she's got our last name now. And this guy comes up and is like, is she yours? And I'm like, yep. She doesn't look like you. Nope. She came out a little bit darker. Yep. Like, I'm not giving you any indicator that I want to have this conversation. And,
right.
And we had learned from that conference that, like, your child's going to be listening to how you answer. And so you don't want to be like, yeah, but she's adopted. Like, no, she's mine, period. And when we brought her home and we saw my parents for the first time, my dad was so excited, and we went for a walk around the neighborhood, and he wanted to tell all the neighbors, like, this is my granddaughter. She's adopted. My daughter just adopted. And I pulled him aside and I said, you're welcome to tell everybody right now how excited you are, but she's your granddaughter, period. Just like the rest of the grandchildren, she is your grandchild, period. And he flipped the switch so fast and was like, you're right. she's my granddaughter, like not my adopted granddaughter. She's my granddaughter. The end.
Exactly. And, people have such an excited heart and so much
hmm
joy. And then when you can give them the tools, they
Yeah.
just embrace it, right? For the
Yeah.
most part, people really embrace it and run with it. It's just people didn't know all this stuff. They didn't
Yeah.
know positive adoption language was a thing or that, hey, we don't talk about that in that regard because the child is literally here listening to how we're describing their identity.
Yeah. Well, and
And
it's just
yeah,
those nuances. Those nuances
yeah.
make a huge difference. And so, and I do think the way I talk to her and how open and transparent, like there is intentionality about that in regards to, wanting her to have self-acceptance. But because she also runs on the anxious side, there's a lot of prepping her, making sure she feels secure, making sure she feels safe and loved. And so I'm constantly like, there's a whole nother intention behind that of like providing support for her anxiety.
hmm
And that's the
Right.
teacher in me.
Yeah. So, of course, like I was saying, she received the perfect mom for her. God had this all planned out.
Yeah, for sure.
So, are there any things that you wish someone had told you about parenthood before you began?
I mean, I think they talk once again, it just comes down to like mom guilt is real. And so providing that, like, nobody talks about those ugly feelings. Nobody talks about like some of the dark thoughts you have or, you know, your own self-doubt. Like everybody, especially on social media, parenting's great and look how happy our family is. And so when you're struggling, you feel kind of isolated. And one of the couples that we did a home study course with, I had told them, I said, when you get your child, um, and you start having these feelings of, nobody told me that you're going to want to shake the baby. Like I told, like that's normal. Nobody talks about it, but that's normal. And there was a situation where I think one of them ended up crying, frustrated, and they're like, remember what MaryAnne said? Like, this is normal. Like, so I just think that nobody talks about the fact that there's these stressors or being overstimulated and the mom guilt you have. And no matter how good you are, no matter how many supports, you're never going to feel like it was enough. And so there's just that, you're doing enough. Like people need to tell you more. Like you just need to be enough. Like it doesn't need to be 100% all the time. You're trying, you're self-aware, you're reflecting. Like there are times when I might, catch myself getting into an argument with my daughter, and my saving grace is that I can go back and teach her how to apologize. Like mommy didn't handle that right. Mommy should have used her words. And so that at least I can teach her accountability and how to apologize. And we're just not perfect. It's harder than it looks. And people tell you it's hard, but you just don't get it till you're doing it.
Yeah, we're all just experiencing this life and our roles for the first time on earth.
hmm Yep.
And if
There's
we can
no
have grace
roadmap.
for each other in that, that helps a lot. But yeah, knowing how to apologize and modeling that for your daughter is so good.
Yeah.
That's going to be just such a great tool for her for all her relationships to come as she gets older too.
Yeah.
Um, so for the families listening today who may be considering adoption or those who are already parenting after placement, what encouragement or advice would you want to leave them with?
Um, for the ones that are wanting to adopt and they're in that waiting period, I think just there's light at the end of the tunnel. Initially, I thought like jumping through all the hoops and getting the home studies and doing all that was like the hard part. And the hard part to the adoption process is waiting. Like you
hmm
have no control. There's nothing you can do. You can't go print more books. You can't, check any more things off your list. You are just waiting. And so for that part, I would say, don't put your life on hold while you're waiting for that phone call. We did. We canceled vacation plans because, we didn't want to be out of town in case we got a phone call. And so go make those vacation plans and go do that stuff, because once the child's here, you're stuck to babysitting, you're stuck to
Yep.
schedule, you're stuck to, you know, an extra plane ticket for the child. Like, so go do stuff. And when you get the call, you can figure out how to maneuver around those plans. And then, just after placement it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to seek resources. Reach out to that birth family if you have that relationship and ask questions. Let them know what's going on. Fill them in. They might have input that you didn't even know you needed. And then at the same time, like we reached out to our pediatrician, like she's running anxious, and everybody's like, oh, kids this age get anxious, or oh, kids this age they have a short attention span. And you as the parent know better. Like you just have a gut instinct, adoptive or biological. And so for me, I had a lot of people go kind of dismiss some of the things I noticed. And I finally saw the pediatrician and they're like, yeah, like this is abnormal. So here are the ways we can support her. So listening to that gut instinct and being willing to advocate when that flag is going up and not dismissing it because other people don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love the things that you shared about mom guilt. If we really think about where that can come from, through many generations of women being moms,
Mm-hmm.
mom guilt causes us to always evaluate whether
Mm-hmm.
or not we did the right thing, whether or not we're making the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it always pushes us to try to do better. But no matter how much better we're doing, we're still going to have that mom guilt no matter what. Even if you're sitting staring at your child 24/7 and you never go anywhere, you never leave the house, your whole life
Mm-hmm.
revolves around them, you're still going to have a moment where you go to the bathroom and have a mom guilt moment, right? And
100%.
that's extreme, but
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah.
built in. No matter what you do, you're just going to have that. So just go with it and understand that it does have a purpose,
Yeah.
right? And that, that's all completely natural. And I feel like that just never ends, 20 years from now, as your daughter makes choices that, perhaps you would have made a choice differently. You think back, oh my gosh, do I have mom guilt about what I did that might have caused her to make that choice?
Right. Well, and then
Right.
like I tend to have no filter. I mean, that was kind of the pun in openly parenting is I tend to be very open and vulnerable, but I've noticed that the more I talk to people, the more they're like, yes, me too. And so when you
Hmm.
talk to people, you reach out for help, you put yourself out there, you're going to realize you're not alone. And then of course I read everything I can get my hands on when like how to, parent an anxious child, how to do this, how to do that, that like the books in themselves provide validation because they're like, we wrote this book because you're not alone. Like people need to
Yeah.
know this because they're dealing with the same thing. And so seeking out resources, talking to other people is super helpful. And if you have to get off social media, like
Hmm.
or like mute the friends that just seem to have a perfect life and like parenting is just perfect because that's not helping you when you're overstimulated and frustrated, like just trying to get through the week.
Right. It's not real. Nobody's like doing a video clip or a photo of that amazing moment at 2 a.m. where their child is up with like some kind of virus
Yeah.
and they only got 2 hours of sleep and they know what their next day is going to look like. And now they're exhausted and they have a sick child. No one really is like romanticizing that.
Yeah. Well, and like I had a friend who she had told me months later how, she was having anxiety attacks and she was so stressed and she wasn't sleeping. And I was like, you should have told us. Like,
Yeah.
we could have been helpful. The other piece of advice I give to new parents is that you're going to have all these people who are like, let us know if you need a babysit or let us know if you want me to come clean your house and cash in on those offers.
Hmm.
Like, take them up on it. Don't feel guilty about it. It takes a village and those offers stop. Like when your child gets to a certain age, adoption is no longer new. Nobody feels the need to like overextend themselves to help you. So cash in, go on a date night, use your friends as babysitters, let parents, cook your meals, whatever. Cash in on those
Yeah,
offers because you're going to wish you had.
I love that. So, MaryAnne, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, your authenticity, and not having your filter on,
Yeah, well, thank
and,
you.
and your wisdom today. I know so many adoptive parents will feel reassured and encouraged, and that they're not alone, and that's
Yeah,
such a big help in the
yeah.
path of parenting. Is there?
Especially adoption, because there's just a lot of people who don't get it. You need a
Hmm.
community of people who get it.
Yeah, I love that. It's so such a great feeling to be with someone who gets it, that connects and has been
Yep.
there and is like, no,
Mhm.
no, girl, you're normal.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, for those who'd like to connect with MaryAnne, you can visit her blog at openlyparenting.com or follow her on Instagram or both at openly parenting. And as always, if you'd like more resources on adoption, visit us at letstalkadoption.com to hear more amazing podcasts like this one. And thanks again, MaryAnne, for being with us. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, adoption is not just a moment, but it's a lifelong journey. Thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Adoption. If you'd like to learn more about today's episode, please visit letstalkadoption.com. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Until next time, take care and God bless.